Today I'm going to briefly talk about what went into the thinking of designing the instructional framework called multiple learning experiences that's behind Tata ClassEdge. A few years ago, when we sat down to design a technology-enabled learning solution for schools in India, we intuitively knew the power of technology in the classroom, right? So you could take students on a trip back in history to 3000 BC and make an experience like an Harappa, for example. They could observe the structure of an atom, they could take a peep into the human brain. All of these things are possible, but when we observed the use of ICT in many schools at that time, we realized the focus was purely on delivering learning content through the use of multimedia. So in a way, the old traditional lecture method and this new multimedia method seem to share one thing in common. That education is nothing but the transfer of information. Earlier from the teacher to the student, and now from the smartboard to the student. So what's in this for the student? How is he getting engaged in the process? So we decided that if you're going to have a product, it cannot be just a technology product. It has to be a holistic instructional or learning product. For that, we need to be clear on two things. What do we mean by the purpose of education, and what constitutes learning? Obviously, what is the purpose of education could differ from person to person based on belief systems. But here's what we believe. Today, for example, we all know that we live in an information-rich society. Access to information is pretty easy. I mean, unlike earlier days, when you had to remember lots of the information stored in your head, and your educational framework was also designed to help people store information in their heads. But that era is over. Today, you can get a mathematical formula in a second. In fact, you have a plethora of information. You have too much of it. So you need to equip students not to remember information purely, but also to identify what kind of information is valid, what is not, what is a constitutes logical argument, what's a biased argument. So these are some of the skills which are more enduring that we need to teach our students, instead of teaching students to get. Of course, social justice is an important concept in education. So whatever we teach, be it the social sciences, be it the sciences, there should be an angle of social justice that comes into the picture. And ultimately, we should enable them to keep learning. They should not perceive learning as something that finishes with a school or with a college. And what constitutes learning? We all know learning has multiple dimensions, but unfortunately, we end up focusing more on retention and transfer. I want to pause a little bit on the read and visualize bit. In fact, in many of the schools where we've implemented Tata ClassEdge, sometimes teachers come back and ask us, saying that we need more and more multimedia animation for different concepts. So one example that comes to mind is this. Children today live in a visually explosive world. We have the TV, the PlayStation, the internet, smartphones, tablets. Anywhere you turn, we have visuals that surround them. So imagine the case of two children. One child who's only read the Harry Potter book. Another child who's seen the movie Harry Potter and then goes on to read the Harry Potter. How do you think the experience will be different for these two children? Obviously, the child who's not seen the movie will be able to visualize something which is more original, more fresh. Whereas the child who's exposed to the movie and then reads the book gets influenced by the visualization of the movie and cannot create an original world in his head. In that sense, too much of visualization kills students' ability to visualize for themselves. So here is a simplistic model of our instructional framework. Essentially, there are three premises that we believe in. One, learning happens optimally in a multi-sensory environment. Second, there are multiple dimensions to learning. And when I say multiple dimensions to learning, it's not just a traditional behavioristic instructional models of Bloom's taxonomy. It should include 21st century skills like thinking, analytical thinking, critical thinking, etc., creativity, and communication and peer interaction. And we need to define multiple kinds of activities that map to both the modalities as well as the outcome. So that's where the crux of the matter lies. We say multi-sensory, not learning styles. Studies show that the human mind is evolved to develop, learn, and operate optimally in a multi-sensory environment. But learning styles, on the other hand, still lack scientific evidence. To give you an example, if you have to teach a person to drive a car, just because that person is a visual learner, you don't stop with showing him just videos or multimedia animations of how to drive a car. Obviously, you're not able to drive a car. Because driving the car in itself is a kinesthetic activity, right? So it doesn't matter if there's a verbal learner or a visual learner, he has to sit inside the car and drive the car. So, in that sense, what we're aiming for is to enable children to experience different modalities and not just separate students into visual learners and auditory learners and give them only those experiences. And that's limited. Here are some of the activity types that we have. Just a sample, it's not a full list of our activities. So we have activities around thinking, artistic activities. When I say artistic activities, it's not just purely artistic activities in an art class, but in science classes or geography classes. You have play as a component of learning, because play is an essential way in which children make sense, make meanings. You need to have that. You have projects. You have different types of media, which is demonstrated media or interactive media, and you need to have that, because technology is not just about viewing, it's also about manipulation of values. For example, you need to be able to increase pressure, temperature on an object and see what the consequences of those variables are on a particular object. Here is an example of an activity, like the thinking activity. So here students write and role-play a dialogue between a geologist and an engineer. And what's the learning outcomes? To assess the kind of instruction that might be suitable for earthquake prone area. So what are we achieving over here? One, of course, they will master the content, the learning content here. Another is being exposed to two professions, to what is it to be a geologist and what is to be an engineer, right? So in the process of mastering the curriculum, they go and do research on what this profession is constitute. And not just that, they are also, through the dialogue, they are also trying to build a scenario and try to solve a problem. So it includes problem solving skills. It also includes writing skills, to be able to write dialogues, right? This is a digital based thinking activity where we have an interactive tool which is available in our virtual labs, where students use the lenses to observe and understand image formation. Here they're drawing inferences, making conclusions. At the same time, it's a use of technology in a manipulative way, not purely by observation. It's an interactive manipulation of technology. Right? Another activity here is about art and music infused into geography. You talk about seasons, you talk about the revolution of the earth and the seasons, and you connect it to music appreciation. So you let them listen to Raga Meghala or Vivaldi's Four Seasons. So one is essentially, this is not a main activity, this is a supportive activity. This can't be a main activity to teach that particular outcome, but this is a supportive activity. And why do you need that? You need to bring that high culture to active classrooms. Students should not take Bollywood as a standard for culture. Today we lack in culture. Essentially, this hunger to go for engineering or medicine. As a result of what happens to students, their ability to identify with aesthetics, good aesthetics, good music, appreciate good forms of art, read high literature, classical literature, not just pop literature, right? So students should be able to understand that what is classical, what is popular, and that to master something which is classical and more complex requires a little more study and a little more attunement. Here's the one, it's a literary activity. So here students analyze the events of the revolt of 57 by writing and writing an article, two articles, one from the perspective of a Britisher, another from the perspective of an Indian. Okay. Now, what are we doing here? One, of course, is the writing skills. Second is we are giving them a historical sense, not teaching them history, which is one of the fundamental things. We don't want them to just learn science, learn mathematics, or learn history. We want them to think like scientists, think like mathematicians, think like historians. They should get behind the process of creating history. When this happens, what is happening over here? When you are writing history from the perspective of Britisher, You understand, you take that position, and then you write the history. The same narrative from the perspective of British. The same facts from the perspective of India. And what do you get? You get two different perspectives. As a result, what do students understand? That history is not just a series of facts, but it depends on which part of the globe you stand in, what kind of background you come from, and what kind of belief systems that you have. And as a result of which, you'll be able to identify the biases that creep into different kinds of historical writing. Another aspect that we focus on is that when we have multiple experiences, what are we actually doing? In a way, we are also reinforcing the concepts through multiple experiences. We know that science has talked about spaced repetition and varied context practice as something that aids learning. And that's something that we give repetition a bad name today. But without repetition, students don't learn. Nobody learns. Like whatever we are doing, like all of us were teachers at one point. We know how our first classes went. And after 10 years or 7 years, how we perform after that. It's the sheer experience of handling classes, right? There's a certain repetition involved. The same repetition is also required in the classroom. And we can't repeat it by just repeating the same thing over and over again. You need to repeat it in multiple formats. So, and it needs to be spaced, like in a day's interval or 2 days interval. And that's what helps them register that information in the brain. So I'll just take you through one particular concept. This is from class 1 EDS on body parts. So you start the class with a rhyme about body parts. It's could be an action song. So it's a little bit of kinesthetic activity and literary activity. Then you move into a worksheet, which is visual, and it's a labeling activity. It's a little bit of application of what you learned. It is followed up by a discussion, which is a verbal activity, which helps them in communicating what they just learned. So this is activity number 3, is discussion. Then you go into demonstrative medium and reinforce what they learned through the visual medium, right? Finally, we have a reinforcement worksheet, which cements the whole idea of body parts. So we have 4 different experiences to reinforce the same concept. And now if you do that, you don't have to teach and go through 3 or 4 pages of content in the textbook. All that you have to do is these 3 or 4 experiences, and you're sure that when students go back and learn on their own, these things will be highly reinforced in their heads. So now, how do we do this? This is what happens. This is the design that we go through. We go then back to the table that I showed in the beginning. So we look at the optimal experiences that are possible to achieve this outcome. Right? So you have a reinforcement worksheet, under understanding, visual auditory, you have a demonstrative medium, and in verbal you have reinforcement worksheet. In application verbal, we have application worksheet. In communication, we have whole class discussion, which is also verbal. So that's how we design an activity. It's not just a series of activity randomly selected. We keep going back to this table, which is the fundamental unit of the design of multiple learning experiences. And we design our experiences based on this. Shorter is always better when it comes to multimedia animation. You may contest it by saying that, if I watch a movie for about 2.5 hours long movie, you remember that pretty well because it's not 10 minutes, it's 2.5 hours. But why is a movie different from something like a conceptual information? Because there's a narrative component to it. If there's a narrative component to anything, or an emotional connect to anything, students or any of us will sit through for up to 2 hours or 3 hours. But if you imagine sitting in front of, sitting in a theater, watching concept after concept in physics, for example, it's going to run off. Nobody's going to sit there. In fact, we are currently doing a project with MIT Boston. And when MIT first introduced their massive open online courses on the edX platform, the videos initially were about 15 to 20 minutes long. Then they observed their students and realized that the attention rates started dropping precisely around the 5th minute. And by the 6th minute, they've kind of gone, more or less. So if you go back and check edX platform today, most of the videos are in the range of over 6 minutes. And this is something that we've been doing since the time that we launched Tata ClassEdge. The other thing is about big structure and details. You know, it's a bad idea to teach an entire concept using a visual medium. Then what's the role of the teacher? If the animation is going to take over the role of the teacher and going to explain every little thing in detail, there's no role for the teacher, right? So what should the animation focus on, if at all they are using animation? It should focus on the main idea. So what is the main idea? Main idea is nothing but answer to just key questions. What is it? How does it happen? Why does it happen? Never a combination of two or three. Always stick to one question. What is it? How does it happen? Why does it happen? Do not combine what with how or how with why. And even if you're talking about what is it or how does it happen or why does it happen, stick to the bare essentials. Stick to the main components. Do not get into detail. Because we know that there is something called the foundational blocks of knowledge. The importance of media is to build the foundation, not to get into the details and confuse the child. Over here, you know, we could have probably talked about photosynthesis, but we don't want to talk about it. We just simply talked about the oxygen carbon dioxide balance through this particular medium. Other important thing is to have cross-curricular connections or interdisciplinary coordinations. You know, we should not put subjects into silos. You know, in many universities abroad, for example, in Europe or the US, even engineering students have to read a paper in literature of philosophy or psychology. Unfortunately, over here, we don't do that. As a result, what happens? They lose the sense for aesthetic appreciation, right? So we need to build the interdisciplinary correlation. So if you're teaching about mathematics and money, you could go back and tell a little bit of history by talking about barter system, for example. Or if you're doing geography and drainage, you could ask them to read the poem Brooks by Alfred Lord Tennyson. So you bring those perspectives to students and they realize that all knowledge is connected in one way or the other. Differentiated activities. This is another one of our key things. We have two different activities called reinforcement for struggling learners and challenge for the high achievers. And when we say struggling learners and high achievers, we don't mean it as permanent labels. You know, a struggling learner in mathematics could be a high achiever in languages, for example. So these are not labels that we need to give students, and as a result, we don't recommend that you divide your class into high achievers and struggling learners. We don't want to do that. Even when you're doing a challenge activity, we ideally have a struggling learner paired with a high achiever in that particular subject. So that there's an opportunity even for the struggling learner to interact with the high achiever and solve those difficult puzzles, and his confidence increases as a result. And also the high achiever tends to empathize more with the struggling student in that sense, and he doesn't go back to the sense of pride. Last point we're talking about is gender, social, cultural sensitivity. And this is something that is evident in many of our textbooks and some of the images that we are exposed to. And this is something that we are very sensitive to. Is it always the mother and the teacher? Are engineers always men? How do we represent Adivasis? Do we have a representation of people from different states in the visual representation? You know, sometimes people from Northeast are almost absent in many of our textbooks and multimedia, right? As we don't really exist. So these are some of the things that we want to bring. Not just that. It's not just about giving you content. It's not just about doing content. You know, we've kept the ClassEdge platform open. In a sense, the teachers can contribute. They can create their own context. They can contribute in any way they want to. They can upload resources from open media. And they can collaborate with each other. So we don't want, because it's difficult for a design firm to create local context in every lesson. That's the role of the teacher. So that's how we kept it open. So it's not just about giving the content, right? So these are the main components of the multiple learning experience model. These are some of the references that we looked at. And obviously the National Curriculum Framework, 21st century skills, Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences, Krishnan Kumar, the ex-director of XCRT, social character of learning. That's where the gender and culture sensitivity aspect comes into the picture. John Medina on Principles for Surviving Work, which is about brain science. David Mellon, American scientist, learning scientist, first principles of instruction. And how do you define multimedia? What are the different aspects that go there's a science behind it. It cannot be just random visualization of all this. Thank you, and if you have any questions, questions? Sure.
Better teachers make better students. I really enjoyed reading that.
Right.
So, what do you talk about?
Right.
The context that is better focused on the teacher side.
Except, right? So we have designed a teacher-led solution, not a self-learning solution. And the way in which you design a teacher-led solution is very different way to design a self-learning solution. Because in a self-learning solution, you can have a longer video with multiple pauses. You need to explain the whole concept in a multimedia format. If that happens, then the teacher gets really confused. But that's a very different one altogether. Here there are short snippets, how teachers can use these snippets in the classroom, the different tools. No questions? Great.
So we're already doing that. So it's a good system since we're doing it, and I wish you all the best.
That's great to hear.